welcome to edition 105, part 3 of All Killa No Filla podcast with me, Rachel Fairburn, and Kiri Pritchard-McLean. Just before we start, we'll do our usual disclaimer. This isn't hero worship. We do this podcast because we have mutual interest in serial killers. And because we are doing this podcast, it stops us from writing to them in prison.
You sound like you're on, you can set your podcast to play at 1.5 speeds.
Yeah.
Anyone who does that already with you, that's going to be incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Do you know why we're talking quickly? It's because we've been recording for 40 minutes, something like that. There was a power cut, of course, because I live in the countryside, and it's wiped everything. So we've got to go back to part 3 of the Unabomber.
So you've missed a rant about Scrooge.
Yeah, therapy.
Therapy.
No, pro-Scrooge,
Pro-Scrooge.
anti-therapy. I'm glad it's gone.
So some spicy opinions have been lost, maybe for the best. But back to the Unabomber. This is part 3 of Ted Kaczynski.
Yes, or the Unabomber or the Junkyard Bomber.
Yeah.
Rachel, do you want to quickly acknowledge what you're wearing?
Oh,
only because you said...
I've not been home for ages, as you know. I'm still waiting to go home. I'm home this afternoon, but I've run out of clothes. I'm cruising around in a night hoodie, which I would not wear for filming usually, or anything really. And there's stains on it, there's Christmas stains on it.
And you can't undo your jacket.
Can't undo my jacket because I've got like a velvet top on, and there's the gravy from Boxing Day on it. And I have got clean items of clothing, but also my washing machine is broken at home, so I'm in a world of hell at the moment. I feel like Ted Kaczynski. Yeah, but I've not brought my stuff, have I?
Okay, fine, sorry.
I've only got bits and bobs. Anyway.
We found some more information about Ted and his tricky relationship with his brother and with women.
And I do take back, actually, what I said about his brother. I was very disparaging about his brother, and there was no reason for that. He actually seems a really nice guy.
David's a good guy.
Yeah, seems a good guy, so I take that back. I do apologise. His brother, David, got Ted a job at a factory where he was a supervisor. And this was when he'd left university.
Yeah, so he'd left, and basically what would happen is he'd go out into the woods, he'd run out of money, and he'd come back and he'd work, and David would often help him. So David was a supervisor at a foam and rubber factory, so he gets Ted sort of a little job, and something unusual happens there that David was surprised about.
Yes, Ted meets a woman who's interested in him.
Bum, bum, bum.
And they get on, he asks her out, she says yes. They go on a few dates. The first date, he comes back and he runs up to David and he says, she kissed me. Bit forward of her. And they have 5 dates.
Yeah.
And David's pleased, he's happy. And then unfortunately she says, Ted, I've had a really nice time, but I'd just like to be friends. Not a good reaction from Ted. What does he do? What any man would do. He writes nasty limericks about her. Yeah,
rude, sexual limericks. And then puts them on Post-it notes around the office.
So immature limericks, aren't they?
Yeah, also about someone that you're like, not going to have another date, and be like, well, I'll show you what you're missing. I'm going to write an offensive limerick around you and stick it on the door of the men's toilets. He's just a prick.
So David is like, can you not do that? Because it's not on. And he's like, oh, right, okay. But then he carries on and he's like, what you can do, fire me. He's like, well, yeah. So he sacks him for doing this, rightly so. But Ted says, well, I followed her to a car and I did contemplate mutilating her.
Right,
well, thanks for not doing that. What a good guy.
Writes it in his little coded diary.
He was also a peeping Tom.
Yeah.
Wendy, wife of Butch.
Yes.
Who lives in the wooded area where Ted lives in his cabin. She's getting changed one day. She's 23 years old, isn't she?
Yeah, so she's like naked in the house kind of thing.
Yeah. As you've every right to be, because you don't think there's some creep having a look.
Absolutely.
So she's mooching around, getting changed. And she sees a pair of eyes peeping through the window. So she screams, gets changed. And it's Ted.
She also says when she sees these eyes looking in at the window at her, the first thing she thinks is, why hasn't Butch taught me how to use a gun yet? I've got a lot of time for Wendy.
Trigger happy. Love it. So she's like, what are you doing here? And he says, what date and time is it?
Yeah, but I think that's bullshit. I think that's a distraction. Like, when you get mugged, you're meant to say, that fence is really tall. So the person mugging you, who's already in a heightened state of adrenaline, just gets confused and runs off. I think that he's gone, oh no, I wasn't expected to be caught staring at her naked. So she's come out and be like, what do you want? He's like, what day is this? Like Scrooge.
Like Scrooge.
Oh, you boy with the tits. What day is this? And so, but I also think, of course he would never know what day and time is, but also why does he need to know?
No, he's got nowhere to be. Well, until a bit later on. Got to get to the last post, haven't he? He's always hiding behind things as well. Trees, gravel piles.
Yeah.
He used to watch people in their hot tubs.
Yeah, his neighbours
as well.
had a hot tub and they were like, we knew he was watching.
Yeah.
Because they could smell him.
He had a very strained relationship with his family, who try very hard with him. You know, David tries hard with him. His parents try hard.
Yeah.
He only replied to letters if a line was drawn under the stamp, which indicated bad news that he had to hear. He was very jealous of David, who gets a girlfriend who he later marries. He doesn't like that. He doesn't go to the wedding. He's not interested. His father becomes incredibly ill. He doesn't bother visiting or anything.
Did not go to the funeral.
Doesn't go to the funeral. He's just like, all right, okay.
He's a prick.
Yeah, he's awful.
So, just to recap at the last end of last episode, I'm smiling because this will be the third time I've said this. He writes a 35,000 word, about 50-page manifesto typed on a typewriter. Could you be asked?
No.
The typewriter, they talk about, it has no italic function, so he has to just write everything in bold if he wants people to really know what's going on. He sends a copy of it, he sends a letter to the New York Times and the Washington Post and a copy of it, and he says, I want you to print this in full, and if you print it in full, I will stop the bombings. I am the Unabomber, but if you don't, I'm going to wreak havoc. Ooh. So there's a big conversation about what are the ethics of negotiating with a domestic terrorist, and they go back and forth. There's such a long delay where they're trying to decide over this. He emails again and goes, well, like, what's happening?
Hello.
Are you gonna? Yeah, hello. And some really high profile people weigh in on it that you don't expect to be pro publishing it, because I think it's a form of, well, they're worried about that espousing his views is going to get people sympathetic to him, and it actually won't stop him. So the director of the FBI at the time, Louis Fresh, I think he pronounced his name, and the Attorney General, Janet Reno, both say you need to print this because there might be something in how he writes or the phrases he uses, because it was very idiosyncratic how he wrote, the punctuation, the words, the spelling mistakes. They said someone will recognise this person a bit like BTK.
Yeah, oh, you write like BTK.
Which is something his wife said to him. So he sent this manifesto in. It's called Industrial Society and Its Future. And he basically said the Industrial Revolution is everything that's wrong with the world. As soon as we started mechanising and bringing in technology, we couldn't have anticipated the consequences would be such a disaster for the human race. I mean, there's arguments in terms of an eco way that he is right in terms of technology has kind of galloped away and we've mined the resources of the planet to the point where it's kind of collapsing now. But he also said it was really damaging for humans in a way that couldn't have been anticipated, in that technology is meant to make things easier, but actually it's destroyed nature and the habitats we're most happy in. His idea was everyone should go to live in the wilderness and then they'll be happy. Bullshit. Because here's what annoys me about all this, right? So there's some things he's right on.
I'll go and live in the wilderness if I've got a nice little hut that has electricity, running water.
Yeah, but he doesn't like his hut. Like, he has to come back and work, and he has to go and buy food because he can't forage it. Like, what he's proposing is going back to a time when 40% of people died at the age of 36.
What you should be asking for is a happy medium.
Yeah, exactly, that there's balance and checks.
Can we have more? Here's my manifesto. A woman-festo. Less technology. Ban AI. We've had this. Less technology.
Can I give you a pro-AI argument? So on Best Medicine, we had a woman come on who's using AI. It's called Mia. And what it does is it takes a load of mammograms. So there's a massive backlog with analysing mammograms. You've got to have 2 consultants do it. So it means it's harder to catch breast cancer earlier. And Mia can scan thousands in seconds and is now learning how to detect breast cancer on average 5 years earlier than the system we have in place. What would happen is it would narrow it down and go, these look like there's something's going to happen. Okay. A consultant would still check it.
That's different.
That's AI.
Yeah. Okay. What I mean is ban AI for the reasons of, making videos of people, making deep fakes of people, that kind of thing. Of course, these things can be good and useful. Then again, I do think we are relying on it a little bit too much, because I do think mistakes will happen.
Yeah, of course they will. But they happen now with human error.
Yeah, of course. But I don't know. I just think maybe we shouldn't rely too heavily on these things, and we should be a little bit more, what's the word, natural in our approach.
natural.
It's just more...
What she was saying is this amazing scientist who's talking about it with me. It was like, we should never get rid of humans. Like,
Yeah,
we
well, that's
always
what I mean.
need experts, but they can narrow down what the experts are looking at.
A
And
happy
then
medium, there you go, is what we would think. I've told you what my friend Karen says, haven't I?
that's not, no one wants to read a manifesto that's like, I propose a happy medium.
No, this is why...
That's Mumsnet.
This is why it's a woman festo. Just a happy medium. Just, can we look at everything and make a decision based on the things that are in front of us and have an opinion on that and not just go, about everything. I've told you about my friend Karen, who is one of my oldest friends, but also one of my oldest friends in age. She's like 65.
Oh, the Kappa.
Yeah. I remember we were sitting once. She said to me, she had a cup of tea and she went, I mean, what have I got to look forward to, Rachel? A mammogram on a car park.
I got the first bit of post I got in the new year was a letter saying, it's time to have your smear test.
Great.
I thought,
Woo!
what a way to start the year.
2024.
Gash out, legs in the air, as I mean to go on. So he's talking about how technology was basically a sickness and it was really damaging humans. He thinks it removed their freedom, their potential. It was being curbed by technology. Innovations aren't being made because we're relying on technology, whereas I would argue that we're making more innovations or innovations in different areas. He was also arguing something that's a really interesting discussion around the world with technology in has made humans sick. And he was sort of going, that's why everyone's medicated. That's why everyone's having therapies, because the world, and I've heard this before about how capitalism is a world that kind of makes it really hard to live in as a human. But like, I can absolutely see that, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I do think that what you're proposing is going back to like the feudal system where we all have like rotten teeth in our heads and things are even, well, actually the feudal system was quite equal for women, but anyway, but like that what's the alternative is like we're all just like shitting in a hole in the floor.
I mean, let's keep these technological.
But who decides what stays and what goes? But you literally can do that.
I think
I've chosen not to have an Alexa in my house because I don't fucking trust her.
No, I wouldn't have that shit. I just don't think that... I think what we need is... Humans need more time to reconnect with nature and do things that are more holistic and more...
Totally agree.
Sort of valuable to the human experience rather than constantly working, looking at phones, driving cars. There needs to be something where humans get off the treadmill of industrial drudgery.
I agree. I totally agree. And there's loads of evidence that says that humans, like the more time you spend in nature, the happier you are. All this kind of thing, forest bathing, all that kind of stuff. There's a reason I moved to the countryside. I totally agree. However, there is a world in which the next problem we have, like in the United Kingdom, other than the Tories winning again this election, is that will happen, by the way.
No, not a chance.
I guarantee it will. I guarantee it will.
I just don't think it will.
So the other thing that I think is what they're worrying about now is loads of jobs are about to be mechanized because the Unabomber, sorry to be like, well, the Unabomber actually says, he says that the big problem here is the lack of meaningful work. And that is true. There's loads of jobs that we would all consider like shit jobs or people use the punchline of a joke. And then you have to go, rightly so, like, not there's anything wrong with that. And no one thinks there's anything wrong with working in Tesco or whatever. No. But there is a large chance in the people I know who work in Tesco that they're not feeling very fulfilled. And he's arguing it's a lack of fulfilling work. But what the future looks like is that those shit jobs are done by machines. And universal basic income comes in and people could go, what am I going to do? I mean, there'll be a lot more Etsy shops, basically. People will crochet more.
What does it make you feel like as a human being that your job can just be done by a computer?
Fucking brilliant. Like, if I had a job I hated...
No, I think that's terrible. Like, if you work on the counter in Asda, Tesco, wherever, how does that make you feel that it's just like, yeah, you can do that, but we'll just get a fucking machine to do it?
But what they can't do... So, for instance, like, now you see that there's, like, certain supermarkets have ones where you can go for a chat. And it's older people who go there because sometimes the only person they speak to that week is the person on the checkout. And there's a woman, I will call her out now. She works in Waitrose in Menai Bridge. Things are going all right, guys. She's Canadian and she's fucking brilliant. Owen is nodding her head. She is amazing. And she goes, when she sees my partner and I, she goes like this. And we come over and have a chat and she's amazing. And people have complained about her because she's chatty. She's absolutely amazing. I heard this through the grapevine, and we wrote an email. We wrote an email saying how brilliant she was.
Excuse me. fuck you. Right, I am a person that I don't really like social interactions unless I know a person. So therefore, I would go to I'm part of the problem, I'll go to the machine, right? Who the fuck are these miserable bastards that this woman is just being pleasant?
She's amazing.
Chatting, doing a job. You don't have to go to her.
She'll be like, how are you? And then she'll be like, she's like, ooh, what would you make with this? And she's like, really like, she's so fun.
I cannot believe what mean-spirited bastard would write in to complain that somebody is nice.
Second homeowners.
That is not only rude, but nasty, that.
I feel bad because I had just heard that someone, like, apparently someone had gone, you're so brilliant, I love coming to you. And she's like, oh, some people don't like it, and someone complained. So I'm getting grapevine stuff here.
And don't get me wrong, I hate people. And I don't...
I love her.
Yeah, but I don't want those interactions. I like to just get in, put my AirPods in, do my shopping, go. I don't want a conversation. But some people do, and that woman's just doing her job, and I think these people are horrible.
You're right.
But I would purposefully now go to her, just to be awkward.
So yeah, he's saying that basically that this, capitalist society is making us thick, and that's why thick is making us sick, and that's why
I'm thick.
is making us thick and sick, and which is why we have to have therapy and things like that. And there are arguments that people have made that he is, well, not saying that he's right, but there's similar arguments at the moment. He's basically saying that every technological advance that comes, humans go, this is brilliant, and then they never see the negative. But I think even when people do see the negative, like we were chatting the other day about a deodorant, and then immediately Owen started getting advert, and everyone knows their phones are listening to them, or like however it works. But we go, oh well, I quite like my phone, or oh, they've got my data anyway. So he is right. Like we're living in that technological age that he was scared of.
I would not have a smartphone if it wasn't for work, cause it's useful for the job that we do. I wouldn't have one. I didn't have an iPhone until, think about 7. I don't think I had an iPhone when we started the podcast.
Really?
Nope. I had like a shit little, and then I had
like a hipster.
I had a BlackBerry. Why did I get an iPhone? I think someone gave me an iPhone, and I was like, all right, okay. And then obviously you're in the routine of having an iPhone, but I wouldn't have one. I mean, I've got an iPad here, but I didn't buy it. It was bought for me. I would happily not have any of these things. Kindle, yes. Rest of it, I'm not.
I think WhatsApp. If I could have a phone that just had WhatsApp on, I just do a lot of work on WhatsApp.
WhatsApp.
Sorry to sound like the Tory government, but that's where I get most of my work done.
Also, I mean, I'm saying this. What did I get for Christmas? A Nintendo Switch. Because apparently I'm 14.
You're a grateful bitch.
I am grateful. But you know what's happened? It's like I try and play a game on it, and Tim's like, oh, what you need to do? I'm like, let me learn.
Yeah. So he espouses some eco-anarchist views in this as well. He's very pro-nature. He thinks everyone needs to live in the wilderness. He also made an interesting point that made me think of Jeremy Corbyn. So he said, listen, we need a revolution, and the only reason a revolution can't happen is because people don't think it can. Of course, there's enough people who are unhappy with the system and want change, but they're just going, oh, nothing ever changes. And it was a really interesting thing. I think it was Sarah Pascoe who was saying about in the last election with Jeremy Corbyn had a manifesto that if people blind read it were like, well, this sounds great. And then they were like, oh, it's Labour Party. And they were like, oh, well, nothing ever changes. So they didn't vote for change because they didn't think that change can actually happen because people are so sort of like beaten down. And that is a point that he was making about things. So his theory was, what I'm trying to do, he says, is create a situation where people get uncomfortable enough that they're going to rebel. And the question is, how do you increase this tension? So his argument is, I'm bombing people and making people feel scared all the time because that increases the tension and it makes unrest more likely. But if you look at history, like, the poll tax riots, people were really just under the cosh and stress. And that is when people come out and like kick off. But there's a point, isn't there, where either people are too run down or exhausted with it all. But there has to be like a break, a big moment. And that's what he argues he was trying to create.
Yeah, he wasn't though. He just wanted to maim people and kill them. That's what he wanted to do.
An interesting thing that happens is, so the New York Times and the Washington Post are like, listen, we got this letter, we don't know what to do with this manifesto. And Penthouse magazine, he's an editor called Bob Giacone, had phoned and wrote to the Unabomber. They had conversations, and Giacone took out a full page advert in the New York Times, did an open letter to the Unabomber, and says, I will print unedited your manifesto. I will give you a regular paid column in the magazine. And he was like, this is an important publication. I want it to be in my magazine. And it was sort of a weird back and forth where people were like, you can't just step in here and say you're going to print the manifesto. And his whole thing was like, listen, we're kind of a shocking publication known for pushing the edges of things. So it's absolutely at home with what we do. And he said, Penthouse is one of the biggest and most quoted magazines in the history of our industry. For 25 years, it was and continues to be the single biggest selling magazine in the Pentagon, which is interesting. So if it's attention you want, you'd be hard-pressed to do better. And what the Unabomber came back and said is like, it wasn't what I had in mind, but it is interesting. But because it's a less reputable publication, I will let you print it in full, unredacted. You can't change anything, but I'm allowed... He says, I reserve my right to do one more bomb.
Yeah. But yeah, just one more bomb after it's been
Just
published.
one little bomb, just because it's not what I had in mind.
Please, just one more. So you publish it and I can do one more. I can just do one more.
It's like when you're arguing over... I did that the other day. When you're arguing over substitutions on a breakfast. My friend wanted a full breakfast and said, but no beans, no tomatoes, no mushrooms. And said, can I have a scrambled instead of fried? And she went, yeah, but it'll be extra for the scrambled. And I went... even though there's no beans, no mushrooms, no tomatoes. And she went, yeah. And I went, okay, so what substitutions are you putting in place then for all the stuff that's not on the meal? And then she was like, oh, I put through the scrambled egg. I was like, yeah, you fucking will.
Why are people so bloody awkward?
Yeah, anyway. So during the manifesto, he uses the phrase we and our a lot. At some point, the name Nathan gets used because there's an investigation to who this Nathan is. It was never a we. It was never an our. It was him on his own. But they didn't believe, because it was kind of all over the country, that it was so late.
I suppose using we is more rousing than I.
Absolutely.
So it's
I believe in my little cabin.
Yeah, it's just like we. He's talking to, us rather than... I mean, not what I stick up for him, but...
he was pretending the Freedom Club was a whole organisation and network.
Well, I suppose in his mind it would become that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And who's to say there wasn't anyone else involved anyway?
Well, everyone later on. So he has really unusual spelling of things, hyphenation in weird places. All these idiosyncrasies mean that when it is published, it is identified very quickly by a member of his family.
But even before the publication, David was encouraged by his wife... because she said she had suspicions already that Ted was the Unabomber.
Really?
Yeah, she was like...
This is Linda Patrick, his wife.
Linda, yeah. She's like, I think it's Ted. And she's never met him, by the way. She's just going off letters that she's read and things that she's heard, right? So David was a bit dismissive at first. But...
yeah, because like... you can imagine
he's weird, but he's not that weird.
Yeah, exactly. If you had a brother that didn't get on with your wife, and then your wife's like, well, I think he's a terrorist. And you're like, listen, he's a right prick, but he's not a terrorist.
He's a terrorist, but he's our terrorist, all right? So David was like, oh, I don't think so. I think you're right. But then he's like, he read the manifesto and he goes, I think Linda's right, actually. So when it's published in the September... in 1995, he starts going through old family papers and stuff like that. And he found letters dating to the 1970s that Ted had sent to newspapers to protest about the abuses of technology. And the phrasing was very similar to the phrasing in the manifesto.
He wrote to his member of Senate as well. And the member of Senate sent it to a professor. And the professor said, this man has very fine ideas. So, like, his ideas, especially with what was happening in the 60s and 70s, wasn't actually that counterculture. There was a lot of people going, we're not sure that this kind of technology is right. He also argued that there was too much police power, which is obviously a thing that people are arguing now, that mass media was just a way of distracting people from what was really going on. I think lots of people would argue that now.
So they contact the FBI.
They had a letter of his from the 1970s, and he had used exact phrase in there that was in the Unabomber's manifesto. So this manifesto is published by the Washington Post, isn't it? When it's published, the FBI start getting 1,000 calls a day. They put up a £1 million reward.
There's a lot of mad people out there.
Oh, yeah. And of course, absolutely loads of fake letters pretending to be the Unabomber to the FBI. So what David does is he does this all proper. This must have been so stressful. He hires Susan Swanson, who is unusually a female personal investigator. She's based in Chicago. And he says, can you just track my brother? Find out everything he's doing, where he's been, what he's up to. They have been estranged at this point for 10 years. And they haven't spoken since like 1990, or seen each other since 1990. Heaven. So there isn't a brilliant relationship. He still loves him. It's still his brother. So he's decided to do everything kind of properly. Susan gets all this information. And David's argument is, we can't tell the FBI yet because the FBI will bowl in. And he said, my brother will do a Waco. I know what he's like. If he's cornered, it'll be a shootout and loads of people will die because that is what Ted is like. So he gets all this information and then he hires an attorney on the quiet. And he says, can you collate all this and put together a kind of case and an investigation? So he's doing this like a one-man police force. The attorney sends the letters off from Ted and the manifesto to a linguistic expert who analyses them and said, this is absolutely the same person.
Wow.
You have to take this to the FBI. So in February 1996, David sends the essay from 1971 to the FBI, and he sends it with the manifesto and says, I think this is it, and sort of has all his evidence. He does it anonymously. And the FBI immediately find out who he is. He gets the reward as well, but we'll come back to that because I know your instinct there is to be like, oh, fucking did it. So they have enough evidence there to go for a search warrant, but it takes about 2 months to go through. So they're doing all this investigating, trying to get their ducks in the row. Now, the reason why they have to move is because on April of 1996, somebody... and there is an investigation, they never find out who from the FBI, leaks that it is David and leaks that it is Ted to CBS News.
Who has done you shit?
Yeah, the news phone and say, we know it's Ted Kaczynski, we know his brother shopped him, we're going to run the story tomorrow. So the FBI are like, right, well, we've got to go and catch him. So they go, and they never found out who it was who did that. And that could have been someone whistleblowing from the inside who's like, they're dilly-dallying now, they need to catch this guy before he does it again. So April 3rd, 1996, they go to the cabin, they basically seize everything in it and arrest him. They take 700 items from the cabin.
700 items?
700 items, including...
what a load of shit.
Journals that amount to 40,000 pages worth of writing, bearing in mind it's done in shorthand as well with those numbers. A live bomb that was ready to post as well. I'm amazed he didn't get blown up. He's got so many live bombs around. He doesn't know what he's doing. An original copy of the manifesto in a typewriter. So at first, experts were like, it's not this mad guy living in the woods. How can it be? It's obviously a massive infrastructure. They keep saying we, they keep saying and then they find like a typed manifesto in the typewriter and they're like, maybe it's the guy in the woods.
Actually, I think you'll find it is the guy that lives in the woods.
So he was considered for a while to be the Zodiac killer.
Right,
because he was in exactly the same area for a few years.
Similar photo fit?
Yeah, similar photo fit.
With the hood up and the glasses.
Yeah. Now, what happened is they start getting a trial together and Ted sees it as an opportunity to present his ideas to the world. He was like, there's going to be huge coverage. It's going to be really famous. And the judge immediately nips it in the bud and goes, you're not representing yourself. And he's like, I want to represent myself. I think that's such a funny thing to do. You're not doing that, obviously. Now, his defense want to plead insanity. And he refuses to let them do that.
Okay, fair play.
Yeah.
Because he's not.
Well,
he is, but he's not.
Well, there's
he
really
knows what he's doing.
Interesting thing. The court hires a psychiatrist who says this person is paranoid schizophrenic. And if he's questioned on his beliefs, he just shuts down. They think it's a result of acute sexual starvation. Very cute. Put it on a t-shirt. Now, that's what the court psychiatrist said. 2 prison psychiatrists, very experienced, speak to him every day for 4 years, and they say there's nothing wrong with this man. He's absolutely sane. Yeah. And they said the reason why he's being presented as a paranoid schizophrenic is political reasons, that you can kind of go, his ideas are mad and he's mad. He went about it in a mad way, yeah. But they were saying it's a political reason for doing it, and it's a much easier trial if you just go, he's mad, and everyone goes, yeah, it does sound mad. Done. So on April of 96, he was indicted on 10 counts of including illegally transporting a bomb, using the post to send a bomb, and
abuse of the post.
Yeah, it was something like abuse of the post and using a bomb. And it's so weird because I was like, you wouldn't have thought. You're like, of course that's a criminal offence, but it's illegal use. So like the army don't have it. Do you know what I mean? Like you can use a bomb if you're in the army, but you can't use a bomb if you're in non-prison. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, of course.
I don't think you can make a bomb. I think bomb making is illegal.
Maybe it wasn't then, because that wasn't one of the things that he was indicted on. And 3 murder charges, of course, for the people who died opening the bombs. On January the 7th, my brother's birthday, 1998, he attempted to take his own life by hanging himself in his cell. They intervened. He was given the death penalty. Now, that was something that David, his brother, was like, please don't give him the death penalty, was trying to sort of negotiate. And he said, please give him leniency. You know, like, we've got all the information now. You don't need to go. Because he was obviously racked with guilt that, like, he didn't ever think it would come to that. And at first there was going to be no death penalty, and then they introduced it. So at first he was just going to be like incarcerated for life, and they went, no, death penalty. And he's like, whoa, that's not what his brother was like, that's not what I agreed to. And then they rolled it back because there was actually kind of public uproar. He had a lot of sympathy because a lot of people were like, his ideas, like, I don't agree with the bombs, but he's not wrong about a lot of what he was saying. Like,
but he was wrong about the bombs, which is the main thing. Bombs, that it was, you can be right about something, but you can be wrong about the big thing that you did.
As I say, it's David Icke. He was right about Jimmy Savile being a paedophile. I was right about the Queen being a lizard. But he's not right about everything. So yes, he decided to plead guilty, which he had always been against doing. So January 2nd, 1988, he pled guilty.
But which he should have done, because if these were his ideas and he stood by them and he thought this was the right thing that he was doing, then yeah, plead guilty.
Well, he then later says, I was forced to do that, and I don't actually think I should be I think his argument is like, I'm not guilty of anything.
War off, Ted. Yeah.
So in May 1998, he is sentenced to serve life without parole, 4 consecutive life sentences. And one of the things he says as he was being charged, or the verdict, he says, I ask that people reserve judgment about me, which is
you can't ask obviously what you want, but
now in prison he's sent to Colorado, which is a maximum security prison. Lots of people write to him. He's moaned. He's like, I get loads of kooks writing to me with weird ideas. They think I'm a cult leader and they want to talk about aliens and be like, yeah, mate, you bombed everyone because we've got mobile phones. That's exactly the kind of audience you're gonna get.
So annoying.
He's corresponding regularly, or was rather, with about 400 people.
Fucking hell.
Busy. Reads loads. As kind of a changed man. As I mentioned earlier, he lives in a cabin. His cell is bigger, or cell was bigger than the cabin he lived in. He showers every day now.
Lovely stuff.
So on April the 10th, 2006, a judge ordered that the stuff from his cabin that was seized and the cabin could be sold, and it would accept anything that was like how to make a bomb or bomb ingredients. The auctioneer who's doing it would keep 10% of the money, and the rest would go to the restitution fund for the victims, which was £15 million.
Oh, okay.
Ted Kaczynski. To go back to David and the £1 million reward, David took out the expenses he paid for the private investigator and the attorney to get the information, and gave the rest to the victims' families.
Absolutely fair play.
He does sound like a pretty amazing man. So Ted then is like,
I mean, at least give yourself a holiday, David. I mean, have something for you. Have a nice dinner.
Maybe we should cut that.
It wasn't. It was his fucking horrible daughter.
It was his daughter.
She's horrible, her.
Yeah. Let's cut some of that out, or at least beep some names. Now, then, when all this is being auctioned, Ted complains, and he writes a letter saying, this is breaking my freedom of speech, that you're letting people buy my writings without my permission. Now, the cabin itself was bought by the museum. It's in Washington, D.C., and there was a big exhibition there, and it featured in it. You could go and visit. It was up this year, and Ted, again, he was complaining about it and saying, this is really unfair on the victims, that actually you would be making money from the Unabomber.
Now he's bothered, isn't he?
Yeah, and the FBI chief went, I'm not going to be told by the Unabomber what's fair to the victim's family. So they kept it up. Now, David, up until at least 2007, wrote to Ted every month, and Ted never replied. Which is really...
Well, he has grassed him up. So
I knew you would take his side.
Fair's fair here.
No, it's not fair, it's fair.
He did betray him.
Yeah, but you can just...
rightly so.
Yeah, he betrayed him rightly so.
I don't want to see anything from the Unabomber's point of view, but from Ted's point of view, he's like, you bastard.
Okay, you'll hate this. In 2010, Ted wrote a book called Technological Slavery that was published by Feral House.
Why?
So he would publish 2 books whilst he was incarcerated.
Okay. Be nice to have the time, wouldn't it?
But also, like, where's that money going? Do you know what I mean?
Isn't there a thing in America that you can't profit off an incarcerated criminal? You can't profit up. So maybe...
Well, he would argue that this is a completely different manifesto. And maybe the money goes to the families. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, why publish it anyway?
Well, they published it and he was like, no, I've got more ideas. I also didn't like the edits that they did. So he republishes it in 2019. It's called Technological Slavery, Volume 1, Revised and Expanded. You can just tell he's a tedious twat.
More boring every year.
Yeah. In December of 2020... a guy is found on a plane. I mean, very hard to be flying at that time anyway. Take your risks, super spreader. He's found with a bomb on him and a copy of the manifesto of the Unabomber.
How is he getting on a plane with a bomb?
Or a manifesto. It's quite thick, isn't it? EasyJet wouldn't let you on with that.
Ryanair,
it's too
have
big.
a charge for manifestos, actually. It's an extra €50 for a manifesto.
Ted Kaczynski dies in prison in 2023.
Did you know that when he died, apparently he did take his own life, apparently. That's the thought. However, he was very towards the end of his life with cancer. Here's something brutal, and I don't want to stick up for the Unabomber. So,
However,
the guy's on his last legs, he's in pain, he's dying, and he thinks, I'm going to, they resuscitate him.
What?
They resuscitate him and take him to hospital.
What? So he's having end of life care for cancer.
Yeah. And
speaking as someone who's recently been at someone's bedside with this, is they usually put a do not resuscitate.
He's ill, but he's still in prison. So, and then he decides that he's going to kill himself.
That'll be an insurance thing. That, like, if they hadn't have taken him to that, the family could sue for
but how fucking
negligence.
brutal is that? I mean, I don't want to stick up for the bastard, but. He's like, oh, God, yeah, right.
Yeah, wake up, come on, you've got cancer, wake up.
Come on. Oh, it's the end for me. Oh, lovely, peaceful. Oh, for fuck's sake. It's like a nightmare. So they resuscitate him anyway, he dies, the end.
The end. That is the Unabomber. But he's a very sort of, there are still people who see him as a very popular counterculture figure. You know, there's T-shirts and things with his face on.
I mean, sure, listen to the ideas, take something from it if you wish, but don't make him some sort of folk hero.
Yeah, that's the issue, isn't it?
He has killed people.
He was
not just killed, maimed people, you know?
And very innocent people. Like, not these are the ones that stick in my head. Tenuous links. Having a computer shop. That's not all the evils. And like I say, we spoke about how he didn't go after high-powered people who could make a difference, really. He was just going after people who thought it would be easy to destroy.
Easily accessible.
And you can see in those coded diaries, it was the fetishization. I really struggle with that word.
I do as well.
But very easy to do.
It's such a hard word. It's fetishization.
Congratulations.
There we go.
It was all about killing. It was all about destroying someone and snuffing out a life. And I think that these quite extreme but perhaps forward-thinking views, some of them, are a separate issue to the fact that he was a serial killer.
I would rather have him than just stop oil, though. Get out of the fucking road.
Oh, God. I think you're fine. Crack on. Someone's got to save the world.
Look, I think they're fine, but I just don't like some of the people.
But do you know what?
Ponsonby Smythe the third.
Well, I agree. I know what you mean. It's a lot of posh shows, but I would rather they were doing that than doing fucking shit comedy. I'm sick of watching 4 out of 10 comedy by Nepo babies.
It needs to stop.
Anyway.
And there's a particular one at the moment that I'm like, you are the king of it. But we'll discuss that off camera. You know exactly
I know who you mean. Yeah, I know who you mean.
Hi, it's me with my one joke.
Well, maybe I don't, actually. So thank you very much for listening. That was the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski. We hope you enjoyed the 3-parter. By this time, hopefully we'll be seeing you on tour in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, next time you see me, hopefully I'll have some clean clothes on.
Or not. Maybe she'll have gone full Unabomber. And
Maybe
she'll be
I
just
will.
like covered in dirt.
Stop plucking my chin hair's grown a beard. Lovely.
Yeah, do you know what? Maybe I have, but I feel like I'm at the moment dodging the beard bullet.
Why? Oh, I've always been like this though. Because I've got dark hair. I'm just
all my
naturally-
mates are like, "Oh, I've got to deal with my beard today," and I'm like, "I never have to."
Oh, I've been,
remember.
yeah, but you know what? I've been like this since I was a teenager. Like I am because dark hair. I'm just so hairy. It's constant fucking this, doing that. You'd think that. Anyway, this is not what we're here for. If you do run an electrolysis studio and you want me to come in and have it for free, more than happy to do that.
Is this what this is now? Classified as the things we want for free?
I think I won't mind some stuff. I think 10 fucking years, mate.
You can't talk about the Unabomber and we talk about how bad technology is and the AI's gone too far and be like, oh, but I'll have a fucking lasers
I just
put
want
in
a
a
bit
beard.
of electrolysis. That's all I want. Is that what it's called? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway.
You laser off your...
Just laser me. Do that.
Well, I know we know a comedian who's had everything lasered off. And it took them months and it's like, there's nothing on me.
Really?
Yeah. She's like, had everything lasered, now never has to do anything.
Very painful.
Yeah.
I was getting a tattoo lasered off, but the pain was too much.
Well, you had to stop.
I had one session and I was like, Christ alive, I'll just get another tattoo over it.
Really?
Yeah, it was too painful. It's the most painful thing.
Interesting. There we go. We'll see you next time when Rachel will have lasered off.
Well, a full beard, actually.